We're in Unit 2 with the second main idea here, which is the phrase model complete. To complete it, we're going to add the predominant function to the mix. We've had tonic, dominant, tonic, the basic phrase model, and now with the addition of predominant chords, we'll have the complete phrase model. So if you have a complete musical thought, you'll come back to the tonic, you'll have closure. We talked about how you can omit the tonic at the end and create a, if you stop short and just do this much, you'll have a half cadence there. Another chord that is optional, sometimes left out, is this predominant chord here. It could be multiple chords, actually, so it's really a function that I'm talking about. Before I get into this too far, I want to talk about harmonic function in general and what that means. If you, okay, say you love football, say. You're used to the idea of there being a particular position in the game. You have the quarterback, say, and multiple people could play that role. We have a similar situation with actors on the stage, actors and actresses. If you have some lead role, you may have several people. There's probably an understudy, at least one if you've got a big production. So there are multiple people who can play a particular role or serve a certain function. We've got the same kind of idea going on here. When we're using these symbols up top, not these very specific ones, but the tonic, the predominant, the dominant, the tonic. And these two tonics are quite different, by the way. This is the opening tonic, and that's the tonic that brings closure. But we use the same symbol for each, but they're different function. The opening tonic, the closing function. These are functions. These are like the quarterback in the football game. They're not a person. They're not a specific chord, but they're a role that a chord can play within a phrase. The predominant, its role is to lead you into the dominant, to provide a pull to the dominant. The dominant's role is to provide a pull to the tonic, to lead into it. Scale degree 7 plays a big role here in helping determine which chords are dominant in function. Which chords can do it? Well, we know the function gets its name from the dominant triad or dominant seventh chord. So obviously that's a main person. That's kind of like the main person that plays that role. But then, because the 7 also has scale degree 7, it's the root. Usually it's like so. It could be 7 diminished 7. The 7 chords can also serve a dominant function. The function we said of the dominant is to lead to the tonic. These lead to the tonic too. And probably the main reason that is because of the leading tone. That note needs to go to 1. And that helps drive the whole chord in that direction toward the tonic function. Closing tonic. Okay, now we're going to have a similar setup here. Some people put forward the 4 chord as the main chord that can play that role. Others take the 2 chord and say, no, that's the main predominant example. And they would think of the 4 chord as a substitute for it. People who say 2 as their main chord for the predominant are usually thinking in terms of descending fifths motion. 2, 5, 1. Okay, that makes sense. There are also people who say, oh, well, the subdominant, the 4 chord, is the main thing because it's one of those primary chords. And they're thinking of 1. If you've got you think of your 1 chord as built up here, and your dominant as being a fifth above, they think of, hey, there's scale degree 4 down here as the subdominant, the dominant below, a fifth below. And those are your 3 primary chords, just kind of like primary colors. There are those, and then there are all these mixtures of it. I kind of like that idea. You can show how it's kind of like a color wheel over here. If you've got, say, blue and yellow, let me take these two because they're probably brighter. Red and blue, say, those are primary colors. Here are the 3 primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. If you take these two, though, the red and the blue, and you combine them, you get purple. So purple, in a way, is a blend. Takes features of both and makes a new color from it. You can think of this as a chord wheel, so it's based off the color wheel. It's trying to show how you've got your primary chords, And then let's take these two. 5 and 1, combine their elements and you get a 3. What do we mean by that? Well, think of the 3 chord as sharing 2 common tones with the 1 and 2 common tones with the 5. We know about the 1 chord, its scale degrees 1, 3, and 5. Well, 3 and 5 belong to the 3 as well. Think of the dominant, scale degrees 5, 7, and 2. Scale degree 5 is there in a 3 chord, and so is scale degree 7. They're the root and third. So this 3 can be viewed kind of like purple is a blend of other colors. The 3 is a blend of elements of other main chords, the 1 and the 5. Notice how they're bold to show that they're the main thing. Let's do the same thing here so that we're ready to look at 4 as well. That's our main chord for right now. So let's look at it. 6 can be viewed as a combination of 1 and 4. It's got scale degrees 1 and 3 from the 1 chord, and it's got the 3rd and 5th from 4. The 4 chord has 6, scale degree 6. It's also part of this chord, and it has scale degree 1, which is part of the 6. So 2 common tones on either side. You can think of the 6 as a blend of those 2. So how these behave, the 3 and the 6 being in between like that, is malleable. Sometimes a 6 does what 1 chords do. Sometimes a 6 does what 4 chords do. This is also kind of interesting on the bottom of the chord wheel. You've got these 2 guys, and notice that there are 2 of them here in between these primary chords. The fallout from that is that 7s don't do what 4 chords do. They tend to be allied just with 5 chords. So their affiliation with 5 is clear cut because you can draw a nice clean line between these 2 chords. There's extra space here. Now here the 2 is allied with the 4. 2s do what 4s do, generally speaking. Okay, so we can group these up. We can say 2s, 4s, and 6s often do what the 4 chord does. Okay? Now, as we mentioned, 6 can do what 1s do, and we could draw another line around here, another bracket, and say these 3 can all do similar jobs. They can stand in for one another. This is the tonic function, say, up here, and these 3 can all play that role. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I'm mainly wanting to focus on what 4 can do. But this gives us a view of the idea of there being main chords that serve particular functions. And those functions, those main functions, are tonic, predominant, and dominant in the context of the phrase model. Now I'm writing that 2 can do what 4 does, but we've just seen that 6 may also do that role. It's on the other side of 4 in that diagram. So we've fleshed out who or what chords can serve in this predominant function, can serve to lead us to the dominant. Let me bring in one other connection. We talked about how the dominant goes to tonic probably because of that powerful resolution of 7 to 1. Scale degree 6 provides a similar kind of impetus in the scale degree 5 over here. And we'll come back to that, particularly in minor. If you're in minor, there's a half step between scale degree 6 and scale degree 5. And when we write it, we're going to have to remember, resolve that lowered scale degree 6 to 5. And when you do that, you're going to help resolve the predominant to the dominant. We'll come back to that idea. Harmonic function. I'm going to talk about how 4 now can be a predominant, but can also do other jobs as well. So just because I am a teacher when I'm in the classroom doesn't mean that I can't do other jobs as well. Again, I want to make a clean divide between the chord and its role. We've noticed over here that multiple chords can play one function, can play this particular role of predominant. But I also want to say the flip side of that, which is that a 4 chord doesn't always play a predominant function, just like I can be a dad at home, which I do. I wear different hats. I do different things in different places. So I'm going to make that point over here. See these 2 functions? One is predominant. That means the chord leads to the dominant. Plagal, you probably know plagal cadence. That's when a 4 chord goes to a 1 chord. We're used to them at the ends of hymns. A lot of times when you add the amen. When you add that amen, you're creating a plagal cadence at the end. It's a motion from 4 to 1. So a 4 chord can play various roles. They're not all created equal. It can do different things in different contexts. If it's a predominant, it means it goes to 5. And we'll write underneath it PD like that, dominant. Little side note, some textbooks do this. That's a little bit confusing, or potentially can be confusing. I'll write this instead, so that it doesn't look like passing and dominant together in close proximity. This eliminates that potential confusion. Plagal chord. Okay, so a plagal, we said that means it's going to come to tonic, but not through the dominant. That would be a dominant. But this is different. It's not a dominant chord, but it moves to the tonic. We call it plagal after the cadence that does just that, 4 to 1 motion. I'm going to flip back into the idea now that various chords can perform a particular role or function. So remember, around that chord wheel, 2 is right next to 4 and often does the same job. Okay, so let's see how that plays out over here. Here's a 2 that we said plays the same role as a 4, in this case a predominant. A 2 can lead you to the dominant. But a 2, particularly a 2-6, can go to a 1. We've actually heard that a lot in minor. If you're listening to the cartoons on a Saturday morning, you might be used to hearing this sort of thing. It's kind of low, I'll have to move it. And that is the cadence that you hear over and over again. I'm playing a 2, it's actually a 2 half diminished 6-5. So there's a 2 going to a 1, and that sounds really good as a cadence. So let me write the symbol for what I just did. Add a chordal 7th in there. And it goes to a major 1. So here's a 2 with a strong pull to the 1. And part of that is because, you know what, that 6 that's lowered is able to resolve to scale degree 5 in this context too. 6 is not going to the root of a dominant, but it's going to the chordal 5th of a tonic chord. Remember over here, scale degree 6 going to 5. I mentioned we'd come back to that. 6, scale degree 6 can resolve to 5, whether it's a 5 chord that follows or a tonic, because both the 5 and the tonic triad both have scale degree 5 in them, and so they can both supply the resolution to that 6. For that reason, you have 4 and 2 chords that can go to the dominant or they can go to the tonic, and now you have a label for the different kinds of functions that they're playing in those different cases. We have predominant and plagal functioning chords, 2 very different kinds.